Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Today is a little different for me. My good partner and compatriot in this, Dr. Sean Deneen, is having advanced computer problems, and so he will not be with us on this particular episode. So in this episode, we delve into 4 of the most audacious, unsolved crimes in modern history. These cases are as perplexing as they are bold. An art museum robbery that emptied a gallery of masterpieces worth hundreds of millions. An aerial hijacking ending with a leap into oblivion. A high-tech vault burglary dubbed the heist of the century. And a mob-connected airport theft that inspired Hollywood. Despite intensive investigation, each crime remains unsolved, shrouded in mystery and myth. In the early hours of March 18, 1990, 2 men walked into a Boston museum and walked out with $500 million in stolen art, vanishing without a trace. In 1971, a hijacker parachuted from a passenger jet with $200,000 in ransom and disappeared into the night sky. Fast forward to 2003, a team of thieves defeated a state-of-the-art security vault in Antwerp, making off with over $100 million in diamonds. And in 1978, armed robbers hit JFK Airport, netting $5.8 million in cash and jewels in what was then the largest cash heist. How were these crimes executed? Who were the suspects? And what theories have emerged? And why, after all these years, do they remain unsolved? In this episode, we'll investigate each case, unraveling the events of that fateful day, exploring the suspects, leads, dead ends, and the lore that has grown up around them. I will be your host, guiding you through the shadowy twists and turns of these 4 infamous cases. Our journey begins in a quiet Boston museum on a night when priceless art was spirited away into the darkness. It's the early hours of March 18, 1990, the night after St. Patrick's Day in Boston. Inside the elegant Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, 2 security guards keep watch over a world-class art collection. The city outside is mostly quiet. Many police are busy overseeing revelers across the town. Inside the museum's dark halls, 23-year-old guard Rick Abbott sits at the front desk, expecting an uneventful night. Nothing ever happens on his watch until at 1:24 a.m. The buzzer sounds. He says, "Hello?" And then the imposter says, "It's a Boston police here. We got a report on the disturbance on the premises. Open up." Abbott checks the surveillance monitor. 2 men in police uniforms stand outside the locked doors. It's unusual. No alarm has gone off, but it's not entirely implausible on a night with citywide partying. Abbott decides to let them in against museum protocol. He opens the side door. The 2 officers step inside the grand hall, police hats low over their eyes, one supporting what looks like a droopy fake mustache. And they say, "Are you alone here tonight?" And Abbott responds, "No, my partner's on patrol upstairs." The supposed cops insist Abbott call his partner down. Fellow guard Randy Heston returns, puzzled. Suddenly, One fake officer turns to Abbott and says sternly, "You look familiar. I think there's a warrant out for your arrest. Step away from the desk, sir." Abbott, confused and now rather alarmed, complies. The only panic button is under that desk. Now, out of reach. In moments, the impostors have both guards against the wall, handcuffing them. Guard Abbott says, "What's going on?" The thief says, "Don't move. Don't worry. This won't take long." And he says, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery." With that chilling declaration, a line so iconic, it later became the title of a documentary. The intruders spring into action. They tape the guards' eyes and mouths shut with duct tape, brutally yanking it around their heads. The two young guards are then led to the basement, handcuffed to steam pipes, and left on the cold concrete floor. Upstairs, the thieves have free rein. The museum's motion detectors later showed the men moved room to room for 81 minutes. They know exactly what they want and what to ignore. In the Dutch room on the second floor, they head straight for the museum's prize pieces. One thief gingerly pulls Rembrandt's Storm on the Sea of Galilee off the wall. Too large to carry framed, they slide the canvas from its stretcher with a blade. Next, A Lady and Gentleman in Black, another Rembrandt, is out the same way, as is the concert by Vermeer. Only one of 34 Vermeer paintings in the world. The thieves also grab a small self-portrait etching by Rembrandt and an ancient Chinese bronze gu, which is a beaker, from a table. In another gallery, they seize 5 sketches by Degas and an eagle finial form, a Napoleonic flagstaff. On the way out, one thief brazenly stops to unscrew a bronze eagle ornament, a relatively worthless piece compared to the masterpieces around him. They even remove a large painting by Monet from its frame in a first-floor room. In total, 13 artworks are stolen. The hall's estimated value is over $200 million at the time, and today that would be upwards of $500 million, making it the costliest art theft ever. Before departing, the thieves do one more strange thing. They check on the guards downstairs one last time, asking, "You guys okay?" Then they take the museum's security videotapes and the data printouts from the motion sensors to conceal their identities and movements. At 2:45 a.m., 81 minutes after they arrived, they walk out the side door into the night, carrying the artwork in 2 trips to their car. They vanish, leaving behind only empty frames on the walls and 2 bound guards in the basement. It isn't until hours later, when the day shift arrives around 8:15 a.m., that the crime is discovered. Unable to contact the night guards, staff call police. The magnitude of the theft becomes apparent. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum has been robbed of 13 irreplaceable artworks. Investigators are baffled. It's a unique case for its lack of physical evidence. The thieves left behind no fingerprints, no alarms were tripped, and aside from the duct-taped guards, there were no witnesses. The empty frames of the stolen paintings are eventually hung back in their places on the gallery walls, a poignant placeholder per the late Ms. Gardner's instructions that her collection remain unchanged. Who pulled off this breathtaking heist? Early suspicion fell on the guards themselves. Was it an inside job? Rick Abbott, the guard who opened the door, became a focus. He was a laid-back music student who admittedly sometimes showed up to work stoned. Investigators noted that Abbott had opened the same side door briefly around 1 a.m., minutes before the thieves arrived. He claimed he did this routinely to ensure it was locked, but it did look suspicious. Plus, one of the thieves brazenly left an empty picture frame leaning against the security director's chair, and Abbott had recently quarreled with that boss. Abbott has always maintained his innocence, and no evidence ever proved he orchestrated the crime. Decades later, he lamented that the FBI never fully cleared him as a suspect. Investigators then turned to Boston's criminal underworld. The FBI's working theory is that the robbery was executed by local mobsters or associates. In 2013, the FBI announced it had identified the thieves as members of a criminal organization based in New England and the Mid-Atlantic. They believe the art was passed through the underworld, possibly transported to Connecticut and Philadelphia before the trail went cold around 2003. Names linked to the case read like a who's who of the Boston mob: George Runsfelder and Leonard DiMuzzo, for instance, were two low-level gangsters suspected early on. Both men died within a year of the heist. One was shot in the head, one of a drug overdose. Interesting, huh? They had ties to criminal boss Carmelo Merlino, who reportedly bragged in the 1990s about knowing how to get the paintings back. Merlino was imprisoned on unrelated charges and died in 2005, never producing the art. Another figure, Robert Guente, a mafia associate, supposedly ended up with some of the paintings and handed off two of them to a Connecticut mobster, Robert Gentile. The FBI even raided Gentile's home in 2012, suspecting that he had Gardner art. They found nothing. Gentile, now an elderly man, denies everything. They can say what they want. I don't care. It doesn't bother me, he told reporters flatly. Other tantalizing theories abound. Notorious art thief Miles Connor was in prison in 1990, but he had a record of daring museum heists and claimed to have cased the Gardner years before. Connor believes his friend Bobby Donati may have been involved. Donati was a slick gangster and an art aficionado who once stole a Rembrandt off a Boston museum wall in 1975. Donati was also caught with police uniforms in his car trunk around that time, an eerie parallel to the Gardner thieves' disguises. Unfortunately, Donati met a grisly end in 1991. He was found stabbed and nearly beheaded in the trunk of a car. An informer later claimed Donati had told him he organized the Gardner heist with others for an international buyer. But with Donati dead, the truth went to the grave with him. Leads have come and gone. Over the years, dozens of tips worldwide have been pursued. Paintings reportedly spotted in mob hangouts, offered for sale in foreign countries, or stashed in attics, but none have panned out. Every few years, on the anniversary of the theft, The Gardner Museum and FBI renew the public's attention, dangling a hefty $10 million reward for information leading to recovery of the art. This is the largest reward ever offered by a private institution. The bounty has spurred countless rumors, but as of today, not a single stolen piece has been recovered. The Gardner Heist endures as a fascinating enigma. The museum still keeps the empty frames on display, patiently awaiting their painting's return. The thieves, whoever they were, no longer be prosecuted. The statute of limitations expired in 1995. Yet the case remains open. Investigator Anthony Amore, the museum's head of security, likens it to a puzzle that can still be solved. New clues occasionally surface. As recently as 2022, authorities investigated a possible connection between the heist and a 1991 mob murder in Boston, showing that even 30-plus years on, they haven't given up. For now, the Gardner Museum robbery remains what the FBI once called one of the most significant unsolved art crimes in history. The empty frames hang like ghosts of the lost art, silently reminding visitors of a mystery that has captivated the world. From the still unsolved theft of priceless paintings, we turn now to an altitude-defying mystery. One that begins not in a museum, but in the cabin of a Boeing 727, thousands of feet above the ground. November 24th, 1971. It's Thanksgiving Eve. Passengers are boarding Northwest Orient Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon, a short 30-minute hop up to Seattle. Among them is a quiet man in a dark business suit and tie, carrying a black attaché briefcase. He buys his one-way ticket with cash under the name Dan Cooper. He's described later as around mid-40s, 6 feet tall, with dark hair, olive complexion, wearing a white shirt and thin black tie. Sat in seat 18C, rear of the plane. The flight takes off as routine at 2:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with 36 passengers. Shortly after takeoff, as the Boeing 727 ascends, the nondescript man beckons flight attendant Florence Schaffner to his seat. He hands her a folded note. Schaffner, expecting another mid-air flirtation from a businessman, just pockets the note without reading it. The man leans toward her and whispers, "Miss, you'd better have a look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner opens the paper, and all in neat all-caps printing, it states an alarming message. The exact wording has been lost, as he later took the note back. But the essence is clear. He demands $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. And he shows her a glimpse of a tangle of wires and red sticks inside his briefcase. A bomb, or a very convincing fake? Schaffner, stunned, goes to inform the cockpit. The captain, William Scott, is told of the hijacker's demands. Scott contacts Seattle Air Traffic Control, which alerts the FBI and Northwest Orient's management. As Flight 305 calmly circles the Puget Sound to buy time, the passengers are told a benign lie: that a minor mechanical issue is delaying their landing. Meanwhile, on the ground, law enforcement scrambles to assemble the ransom, $200,000 in $20 bills, that's 10,000 banknotes, and parachutes as specified. The airline's president personally authorizes full compliance. Whatever this hijacker wants, he should get. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow, just 22, is now seated behind the hijacker as the plane loops lazily in the sky. She notices he's remarkably calm and polite. Tina later describes him, saying Cooper was not nervous. He seemed rather nice, and he was not cruel or nasty. Indeed, he's the picture of cool. He lights a cigarette. Yeah, it's the 70s, so one could still smoke on planes. And orders a bourbon and soda, which he pays for in cash. At one point, Tina asks this mysterious man, "Why are you doing this?" Perhaps wondering if Northwest Airlines had wronged him somehow. He chuckles and replies, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airline. I just have a grudge." His cryptic answer is the only clue to his motive. As daylight fades into evening around 5:40 p.m., Flight 305 finally lands at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. By now, the FBI has delivered the ransom and parachutes. The hijacker, who called himself Cooper, instructs Captain Scott to taxi the 727 to a far, isolated area of the tarmac and douse the lights. In the dimly lit solitude, airline operations staff approach cautiously and hand off 2 parachute backpacks and 2 reserve chutes, along with a large canvas bag filled with $20 bills, totaling $200,000. Cooper allows the 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants to leave, a Thanksgiving gift of sorts. Both Schaffner and another attendant exit with the passengers, leaving only the cockpit crew and Tina Mucklow on board with the hijacker. The weather has turned nasty. It's a cold, drizzly night in Seattle, but Cooper is intent on continuing with his plan. Through Tina, he gives the cockpit very specific instructions. They are to refuel and then take off again, heading south towards Mexico City at minimum airspeed around 100 knots at a low altitude, 10,000 feet, and with wing flaps at 15 degrees. Crucially, he orders the pilots to keep the cabin unpressurized and leave the rear exit door unlocked. The man knows his planes. These are all configurations to facilitate a safe parachute jump. The Boeing 727 is unique. It has an aft, that's a rear, stairway that opens from the belly of the aircraft. Cooper plans to use that. At 7:40, after hours on the ground, Flight 305 takes off again, as instructed. Cooper has Tina Mucklow stay in the cockpit with the pilots and close the door behind her. He's now alone in the passenger cabin as the jet plods along the southward towards in the stormy darkness. The crew can't see him, but they sense his actions. A warning light flashes in the cockpit, indicating the rear stairway has been deployed mid-flight. The pilots offer over the intercom to help him with the stairs. Cooper brusquely refuses. Around 8:05 p.m., the crew feels a sudden change in cabin air pressure, likely the aft door opening, followed by a distinct bump and oscillation in the aircraft's tail. The plane's tail section actually lifts upward momentarily. It's believed this was the moment D.B. Cooper jumped. In that instant, somehow, over the dense forest of southwestern Washington into a cold, rainy gale, Cooper leapt into the darkness wearing a parachute and holding the money bag. He left behind his black clip-on tie, which he'd removed, and tie clip, 2 of the 4 parachutes, and some rope he used to secure the money bag. The pilots, unaware of exactly when he jumped, continued to Reno as instructed for the refueling stop. They land safely at Reno Airport around 10:15 p.m. and only then confirm that the hijacker is no longer on board. He's gone. Immediately, FBI agents and law enforcement swarm the plane. They collect evidence. Cooper's clip-on tie, a black J.C. Penney tie, which incredibly, decades later, will yield a partial DNA sample. 40 cigarette butts, sadly later lost by the FBI, and the 2 remaining parachutes. Outside, a massive search begins. The FBI codenames the case Norjack for Northwest Hijacking. They face a daunting task. The plane has been flying in darkness through a storm over a vast wilderness. Cooper's jump zone isn't precisely known. Estimates put it near the Southern Cascades, perhaps around the area of Ariel, Washington, near the Lewis River. Over the next few weeks, hundreds of troops, police, and volunteers comb the woods and mountains. Helicopters and airplanes conduct aerial surveys. Not a shred of Cooper is found. Not his body, if he fell to his death. Not the parachute. Not the money. The world is captivated by the story of the mysterious skyjacker who disappeared. Media mistakenly call him D.B. Cooper due to a reporter's confusion with a suspect's name. And that name sticks in legend. Who was this man? Did he survive? The FBI begins tackling these questions with a massive investigation. They interview everyone on the flight crew extensively. Tina Mucklow recalls Cooper being familiar with the Seattle area. He even pointed out when the plane flew over Tacoma, saying, looks like Tacoma down there, showing local knowledge. He knew about the Air Force base delivering the chutes, too. These hints suggest Cooper might have a military background or at least parachuting experience. However, curiously, he chooses one parachute that was a training chute sewn shut. One of the 4 was an unusable dummy that he accidentally took. That and the way he jumped at night in a storm with loafers and a trench coat on, suggesting to some he might not be an expert skydiver. The FBI openly speculated that Cooper probably did not survive the jump, citing the dangerous conditions and the apparent lack of preparedness. But until a body or the money turned up, they had to assume he could be alive. The FBI's suspect list quickly ballooned. Hundreds of leads poured in. Over the next 5 years, they considered more than 800 suspects, methodically narrowing it down to a few dozen. They questioned men with skydiving experience, former military parachute, airline employees, petty criminals, you name it. One early suspect was a man actually named D.B. Cooper in Oregon, hence the media mix-up. But he was quickly cleared. Perhaps the most famous suspect was Richard Floyd McCoy, a former Army Green Beret and Vietnam veteran who, astonishingly, executed a very similar hijacking just 5 months after Cooper's. In April 1972, McCoy hijacked a plane, demanded $500,000, and parachuted out over Utah. He was caught and jailed, then later escaped and died in a shootout. Many thought McCoy was Cooper. The methods were so alike. But the FBI ruled McCoy out. He didn't match witnesses' descriptions of Cooper. McCoy was much younger. And he had an alibi for Thanksgiving 1971. Other suspects emerged throughout the years, each with intriguing stories, but no definitive proof. Dwayne Weber was a World War II paratrooper who, on his deathbed in 1995, allegedly told his wife, "I'm Dan Cooper." She later also found a Northwest Airlines ticket from 1971 in his belongings. The FBI checked his fingerprints and DNA against what little Cooper evidence they had. No match. Kenneth Christensen was another man, a Northwest Airlines mechanic and former paratrooper. After his death, his brother found odd clues, gold coins and a bank bag and a photo of him that looked similar to Cooper's composite sketch, but, again, nothing concrete. The FBI didn't find him convincing. Barbara Dayton, a transgender woman and pilot, claimed she was Cooper, having disguised herself as a man to do the deed, a theory that certainly added color but lacked supporting evidence and was largely dismissed. For every suspect that gained media attention, the FBI painstakingly checked alibis and details. By the 40th anniversary of the hijacking, most leads had fizzled. A bit of the ransom did surface in 1980. A boy digging on the riverbank of the Columbia River at a spot called Tennabar found 3 bundles of weathered $20 bills, $5,800 worth. Amazingly, the serial numbers matched the Cooper ransom money. This suggested that at least some of the cash made it to that river, about 20 miles downstream from the suspected jump area. How did it get there? Did Cooper drop some of it as he fell, or did it wash there later? It's one of many enduring sub-mysteries of the case. The rest of the money, $194,000, has never turned up in circulation. The FBI had recorded all the serial numbers, of course, strengthening the theory that it was never spent because Cooper didn't live to spend it. Well, I wonder. The D.B. Cooper case officially remains unsolved and is the only documented unsolved air piracy case in commercial aviation history. After 45 years of investigation in 2016, the FBI announced it was suspending active investigation, effectively closing the case file while leaving it technically open should new evidence emerge. In their closing statement, the Bureau noted it had done all it could and would be redirecting resources elsewhere. They released to the public their archived evidence, including photos and records. Still, the legend of D.B. Cooper lives on in popular culture, books, movies, folk songs, even an annual CooperCon gathering of enthusiasts. Amateur sleuths continue to chase leads, and a whole subculture of Cooperites debate pet theories on forums and documentaries. So what happened to Cooper after he jumped? It's a question that may never be answered. Did he die on some remote slope, his remains and the ransom rotting away under moss and snow? Or did he miraculously survive, slip out of the woods, and quietly live out the rest of his life, spending the untraceable cash in small amounts? Each possibility fuels the myth. The FBI itself admitted that the case became an intriguing mystery for lawmen and civilians alike. D.B. Cooper has become an American folk anti-hero, the gentleman thief who hurt no one aside from terrifying the crew and might have beaten the odds. As we descend from the cloudy skies of the Pacific Northwest, our search for answers continues on the ground to the polished halls of international diamond trading in Antwerp, Belgium, where our next story unfolds. If D.B. Cooper's caper was a lone wolf's dare, the Antwerp Diamond Heist was a meticulously planned team operation, often called the greatest heist of the 21st century. So let's start on our chapter, the Antwerp Diamond Heist. Antwerp, Belgium, a city that glittered with diamonds. In 2003, 80% of the world's uncut diamonds passed through Antwerp's Diamond District. At its heart stood the Antwerp World Diamond Center, a high-security fortress where millions in gems were stored in underground vaults. It seemed impenetrable, protected by 10 layers of security, from seismic sensors to a lock with 100 million possible combinations. But in the early hours of February 16, 2003, that vault was breached in spectacular fashion. The thieves haul diamonds, gold, and jewelry valued at more than $100 million, making it the largest diamond heist ever. It was quickly dubbed the heist of the century. Now, how did this happen under the noses of Antwerp's guards? The story sounds like a Hollywood script, and indeed, the details astounded police, who couldn't explain how it was done. It began with patience and deception. The mastermind, an Italian thief named Leonardo Notarbartolo, moved to Antwerp about 18 months before the heist. He rented an office in the Diamond Center, paying in cash, posing as a jeweler trading in diamonds. This gave him a tenant ID card for 24/7 access to the building. By day, he wore expensive suits, chatted up guards, and ingratiated himself with the trading community, all a brilliant cover. In reality, Notarbartolo was conducting surveillance. He and his team covertly photographed every inch of the vault area with tiny camera pins. Security grew used to seeing him around. Their vigilance waned. Notarbartolo assembled a crew of Italian associates later referred to by colorfully ominous nicknames: the Genius, an electronics expert; the King of Keys, a master locksmith; the Monster, muscle and alarm specialist; and Speedy, the getaway driver and gopher. Each man had a specific skill to defeat a layer of the vault's security. They even built a full-scale replica of the vault in a warehouse back in Italy to practice on, allegedly using inside information from a diamond trader who aided them. The vault sat 2 floors underground, behind multiple locked doors and alarms. To reach it, the thieves planned meticulously. The operation went down over the weekend, when the Diamond Center building was closed and quiet. On Saturday, February the 15th, 2003, while the district slept, the team made their move. Using a back route, they picked a lock on an adjacent building that was vacant. This gave them access to a private garden courtyard shared with the Diamond Center. From there, they climbed up to a small balcony on the second floor of the Diamond Center. An infrared sensor guarded that terrace, but the genius had crafted a clever device, a homemade polyester shield, which he held in front of him to mask his body heat. Creeping in the shield's shadow, he covered the IR sensor, essentially blinding it, and then disabled an alarm on a nearby window. Now they were in the building. The hallways had motion-activated security cameras, but the thieves simply covered each camera with a plastic bag before it saw them. They navigated to the vault antechamber. There they faced the massive steel vault door and a secondary locked gate. The vault door alone had multiple safeguards: a combination dial, a barometric sensor, a magnetic alarm, and the huge key, almost a foot long, that only the guard had. Here's how they beat each one: the combination lock. Earlier, the team's tiny hidden camera above the vault door had rewarded the guard entering the combo during routine opening. The footage, wirelessly sent to a receiver hidden in a fire extinguisher, gave them the vault's combination in advance. On the night of the heist, the genius confidently dialed the known number into the combination lock. The vault key. Now, this was unexpected luck. The thieves had actually managed to duplicate the vault key beforehand using video footage and measurements, an incredible feat itself. But when they searched a utility room that night, they found the original key hanging inside, a careless oversight by staff. The king of keys decided to simply use the original, then take it, so the theft might go unnoticed longer. He knew if they left the original, investigators would realize a duplicate existed, so he pocketed the real key. To this day, the manufacturers didn't know their key had been copied. The magnetic alarm on the door. When armed, opening the door would break a magnetic field and trigger an alarm. To fool it, the genius stuck a small, custom-built aluminum plate over the door's magnetic contacts, using double-sided tape. This held the magnets side by side in place even after the door opened, so the alarm never knew the door swung open. Very clever. The light sensor inside the vault. Now, a sensor would detect if lights were turned on in the vault, an unusual but clever security measure. The crew solved this by simply unscrewing the light bulbs or keeping the vault dark. In fact, when they were ready to open the door, they shut off the antechamber lights so that when the vault opened, any light sensor inside couldn't see illumination. With all these steps accomplished, the only things remaining were a footstep sensor on the vault floor and the heat motion sensors inside the vault room. But the team had prepared for these too. Days before, on a final visit during business hours, Notarbartolo himself entered the vault. on the pretext of getting into his deposit box. While alone, he surreptitiously sprayed a fine mist of women's hairspray into the air and onto the heat motion sensors on the ceiling. The oily film of the spray effectively insulated the sensors temporarily, so they wouldn't detect the small changes in infrared light or movement for a day or two. This bought the thieves time that night. The sensors were blinded, and indeed, security cameras footage later showed Notopotalo doing something in the vault that day, but the guard saw nothing amiss. Now, the floor sensor, the pressure sensor on the floor, could detect if someone stepped in the vault. The monster had a solution. Once the vault door was open, he wedged himself in darkness through the opened door and reached up into a panel in the ceiling where the sensor's wiring ran. With steady hands, he spliced a new wire to create a loop, effectively shunting or bypassing the sensor circulation. This way, the alarm loop never registered an interruption when they walked inside. It was fooled into thinking everything was normal. Additionally, they placed styrofoam boxes over heat sensors and tape over light sensors in the vault, just as extra precaution. Finally, all the barriers were down. Inside the silent, dark vault, Antwerp's treasures lay in rows of safe deposit boxes. The crew had practiced exactly how to navigate in the pitch black. They even counted steps to certain boxes in their replica. Using small pin light, used only sparingly, they set to work on the metal safe boxes. The King of Keys had brought a special tool, a hand-cranked drill or jack. With it, they methodically broke open box after box. They were selective, going for boxes likely to hold loose diamonds and high-value goods. Handfuls of diamonds, packets of gems, gold bars, jewelry, all were stuffed into duffel bags. It's estimated they opened over 100 deposit boxes that night. Each man worked swiftly at his task, whispering in Italian, their adrenaline tempered by discipline. One of them periodically checked a small boroscope camera snaked under the vault door to watch the hallway, ensuring no guard unexpectedly patrolled by. But no one came. The building was empty. Above ground, in a getaway car nearby, Notopotalo listened to a police scanner, ready to warn his team or drive off if an alarm was triggered. It never was. Sometime before dawn, the thieves had loaded up their haul, which would later be estimated at well over 100 million, though the thieves would claim it was less. They retraced their path out, locking the internal gate and vault door behind them to delay discovery, removing their gear and disappearing into the night with bulging bags of loot, the perfect crime for the moment. It wasn't until Monday morning, February the 17th, when the Diamond Center reopened after the weekend, that the heist was discovered. An employee descended to the vault and found the door ajar and the room ransacked. The crime scene stunned Belgian police. How had these robbers defeated so many systems without anyone noticing? The investigators reviewed security footage and found nothing but static or darkness where expected. The only clue initially was the vault itself, showing signs of sophisticated tampering. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place: a garbage pile in a wooded area south of Brussels. The day after the heist, a local man out for a walk stumbled upon a heap of odd trash near the road. He found cut-up safe deposit boxes, dozens of torn envelopes from the Diamond Center, videotape, and a half-eaten salami sandwich, all dumped in the bushes. Realizing it looked suspicious, he called police. It turned out the thieves, on their drive back to Italy, had panicked and tossed out a bag of incriminating evidence, thanks largely to the jittery Speedy, who lost his nerve. Among the trash, police found an envelope with an address that led them to Leonardo Notarbartolo. Notarbartolo was arrested in Belgium about a week after the heist. Upon questioning, he initially claimed he was an innocent diamond dealer, but the evidence was damning. They found safe deposit box keys at his residence and traces tying him to the crime. Eventually, Notarbartolo was tried and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Two of his accomplices, likely Speedy and one other, were also caught up and given brief sentences. However, much of the gang was never found, including the locksmith, King of Keys, an electronics genius whose true identities were never confirmed. Most of the diamonds were never recovered. This isn't surprising, as diamonds are easy to hide and resell. They likely vanished into the black market within days. In fact, when police captured Notarbartolo, they found almost none of the loot. He claimed that the theft netted far less than authorities thought, hinting that many of the vault's deposit boxes were actually empty or filled with fake gems, suggesting a possible insurance fraud by diamond dealers. This claim, however, could be a crafty way to reduce the perceived scale of the crime. To this day, the Antwerp Diamond Heist stands as a legendary feat of criminal engineering. The precise choreography of defeating each security system earned the thieves begrudging respect in law enforcement circles. As Wired magazine wrote, it matches any heist flick for geekery and plot twists. One investigator marveled that everyday items like hairspray, styrofoam, and tape were used to outfox million-dollar security. Notarbartolo, upon his release, remained tight-lipped for years, but he eventually gave one interview from prison to journalist Joshua Davis, starting by saying, "I may be a thief and a liar, but I'm going to tell you a true story." He painted himself as a small player in a larger intrigue, possibly involving crooked diamond traders. True or not, his is the only account we have from the inside. In the end, despite a few arrests, the Antwerp case is technically unsolved regarding the full conspiracy and missing loot. The police recovered nothing of value. The trail of the diamonds went cold. It's a tale that highlights how even the strongest vault can be undone by human oversight and clever subterfuge. The Antwerp heist has entered modern folklore as a pinnacle of heist ingenuity, an almost perfect crime that, if not for one slip up with the garbage, might have gone completely unsolved. From the Diamond District of Antwerp, we return now to the United States, to New York City in the late 1970s, where our final case involves a daring robbery with a very different aftermath. Unlike the cool professional getaway in Antwerp, this next heist's perpetrators found themselves looking over their shoulders as one mobster after another turned up dead. So with that, let's turn to our next chapter of Lufthansa Heist of 1978. It's the pre-dawn hours of December 11th, 1978. John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. Inside Lufthansa's cargo terminal, Night employees were wrapping up the late shift. They have no idea that outside in the frosty darkness a crew of masked men is lying in wait. At around 3 a.m., a black Ford Econoline van rolls up near Cargo Building 261. Out jump half a dozen armed robbers in ski masks. With practiced efficiency, they cut the padlock on a gate with bolt cutters and move into position. This is the start of what will be America's biggest cash robbery at the time. The Lufthansa heist was not a random hit. It was a carefully planned inside job with ties to the New York Mafia. The mastermind was reputed to be James Jimmy the Gent Burke, an Irish-American gangster associated with the Luches crime family. Burke had a crew of seasoned thieves and hijackers who'd been exploiting airport shipments for years. They got a tip from an airport insider, Louis Werner, a Lufthansa cargo supervisor, drowning in gambling debts. Werner had noticed a tantalizing opportunity. Lufthansa regularly flew in large shipments of U.S. currency from West Germany, money from American servicemen abroad, and stored it temporarily at a vault before transfer. In December of 1978, one shipment got held over the weekend, leaving a pile of cash ripe for the taking. Werner fed this info to a bookie friend who passed it to Burke's crew, and so Burke got his plan set in motion. Burke's crew that night includes Jimmy DeSimon, Angelo Seppi, Joe Buddha Monry, Frankie Carbone, Robert McMahon, and others, a mix of mob associates adept at violence and thievery. As they breach the cargo building, they swiftly encounter their first employee, John Murray. He was a senior cargo agent, and he was walking out of the vault area and is met with a gun muzzle to the face. The masked men grab him. "Don't be stupid and you won't get hurt," they said. Murray is forced at gunpoint into the employee lunchroom, where 5 other overnight workers are on break. The crew forces everyone to lie flat on the ground, eyes closed. One robber growls, "If you look up, you're dead." The hostages comply, trembling on the linoleum. Murray is yanked up and demanded, "Who else is in the warehouse?" He reluctantly mentions 2 more colleagues, Rudy Elrich, the night cargo manager, and Kenny Whalen, a cargo transfer driver out on the ramp. The robbers decide to collect them too. They instruct Murray to call Elric on the intercom and lure him upstairs. Elric unsuspectingly walks into the trap and is promptly herded with the others at gunpoint. Meanwhile, out on the tarmac, employee Kerry Whalen is just returning from an errand on the forklift. He notices a strange sight, a black van parked near the loading ramp with 2 men inside. They're not airport workers. Concerned, Whalen approaches, and suddenly one man leaps out with a gun. "Freeze! Get in the van!" Instantly realizing this is trouble, Whalen turns to run and shout for help, but he's pistol-whipped across the head. Dazed and bleeding, he's dragged into the van and tied up. The van drives him into the cargo building, where Whalen is hauled out and thrown beside the other hostages in the lunchroom. Another employee, Rolf Redman, hears the scuffle and comes to investigate, but he too is grabbed and thrown in with the others. Now, the robbers have rounded up all 10 Lufthansa employees on duty. With guns on the hostages, the robbers move on to the vault. They know exactly where to go, thanks to their inside man's intel. Under duress, night manager Rudy Elric is forced to disassemble the vault alarm and open the heavy double doors. Inside are stacks of cash and valuables. The crew quickly locates 72 wooden cartons filled with currency. 72 wooden cartons filled with currency, each weighing about 15 pounds. This is their prize. They form a chain, loading crate after crate into their van parked by the door. Each crate is full of unmarked, used $20 bills, untraceable money, totaling an estimated $5 million in cash. They also grab about $875,000 in jewelry and gems being shipped that day. The sheer volume of loot is enormous. Later, it's tallied at $5.875 million, about $24 million in today's money. The hostages remain face down on the floor, some bound with duct tape, threatened to stay silent. One or two have guns held to their heads as leverage while the vault is cleared. Within about an hour, the job is complete. At approximately 4:21, the crew is ready to leave. Before they do, a robber issues a final warning to the employees. Don't call the cops for at least 15 minutes or we'll come back and kill you. They emphasize that they'll be watching. In fact, they had timed things up so that a Port Authority police patrol car, which swings by around 4:30, would be the one to find them. Terrified, the employees nod. The robbers then vanish into the night, driving the van off the airport property to a predetermined rendezvous. The entire heist lasted just over 64 minutes, a little more than an hour. It was astonishingly efficient. At about 4:30 a.m., as instructed, one of the shaken employees raises the alarm. Police respond to find 10 victims, but no sign of the culprits. The magnitude of the theft quickly becomes clear, and by daylight, the FBI is swarming JFK Airport. They soon declare it the largest cash robbery in U.S. history. But stealing the money was only half the story. The getaway and aftermath of the Lufthansa heist became infamous, largely because of what Jimmy Burke did next. Now, Burke had the loot brought to a safe house, an auto repair garage in Brooklyn, tied to a Gambino mobster, John Gotti. Interestingly, there the money and jewels were divided up and stashed. The plan was to launder the cash slowly and keep things quiet. However, news of the huge score hit the media almost immediately, and FBI pressure was intense. Jimmy Burke, a paranoid and ruthless man, began to worry. There were perhaps a dozen people who knew details of the heist and were involved in some way. Any one of them could rat for a deal or attract attention by spending lavishly. The Lucchese family capo, Paul Vario, allegedly ordered Burke to clean up loose ends. What followed was a trail of blood that would later inspire the famous montage of whacked associates in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, the movie. Within days of the heist, the first mistake happened. Getaway driver Parnell Stacks Edwards failed to dispose of the van properly. He was supposed to drive it to a junkyard in New Jersey, one connected to John Gotti, and have it crushed. Instead, Stacks got high or lazy and left the van parked on a Brooklyn street in front of a fire hydrant. Police towed it and quickly linked it to the crime via fingerprints. This blunder put Stacks on Burke's hit list. Just days before Christmas, Burke sent Tommy DeSimone and Angelo Seppi to kill Stacks Edwards, which they did, shooting him in the head in his apartment, reportedly while he was eating fried chicken. That was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, at least 8 more people connected to the heist were murdered on Burke's orders. The victims included Martin Krugman, the bookie who first tipped off the score, who kept demanding his big share. Burke feared he'd talk, so Krugman disappeared in January. Joe Budum Monry and Robert McMahon, 2 of the robbers, were found shot execution style in their car. Teresa Ferrara, a mob associate, rumored to be an informant who helped launder some jewels, turned up dismembered. Frank Carbone, another crew member, was found frozen to death in a refrigerated truck. It seemed anyone who knew too much or made Burke's uneasy was eliminated. As Henry Hill, a member of the Burke crew who wasn't directly in the heist but knew the players, later said, rather than give everyone $400,000 or $500,000 apiece, it was easier for Jimmy to put a 25-cent bullet in their head. Hill explained that Burke decided murder was cheaper than sharing the loot. This quote chillingly encapsulated Burke's mindset. The FBI, for its part, suspected Burke's crew almost immediately. Within days after the robbery, agents had strong hunches given Burke's history of airport truck hijackings, and because Stacks Edwards' abandoned van tied many of them to the scene. But knowing and proving are different things. Throughout 1979, as bodies piled up, authorities scrambled for evidence. Many potential witnesses were unfortunately being silenced permanently. It didn't help that key informants were too scared to talk. One break came when Henry Hill, a close associate of Burke, got arrested on narcotics charges in 1980. Facing a lengthy sentence, or the likely prospect of Burke killing him too, Hill flipped and entered witness protection, spilling secrets on the Lufthansa heist and other crimes. His testimonies helped convict Burke on unrelated charges. Burke got convicted of a murder and got 20 years for fixing college football games. But prosecutors still struggled to directly pin the Lufthansa robbery on him. In the end, one of the dozens involved, only one person is ever convicted for the Lufthansa heist itself, insider Louis Werner, who'd given the tip and logistical help. He was arrested in 1979. Another co-conspirator ratted him out and got 15 years. Werner's testimony, however, was limited. He feared mafia retribution. Jimmy Burke was never charged with the heist, though it's widely accepted he was the ringleader. Burke died in prison in 1996 while serving time for other crimes. Tommy DeSimone, the hot-headed hitman who likely pulled the trigger on several of the murders, vanished in early 1979, presumably killed in mob retaliation. A footnote: he'd anger the Gambino family by killing 2 of their made men, depicted as the made man Billy Bat. incident in Goodfellas. The Lufthansa case remained on the FBI's books for decades. Every now and then, they'd chase a lead or a DNA match. It was called the case that just won't die. As early as 1980. Indeed, in 2014, nearly 36 years later, the FBI made headlines raiding the home of Vincent Asaro, an elderly Bonanno family mobster. They believed Asaro had a hand in the planning and maybe still had some of the loot. He was charged in connection with the heist, among other crimes, but at his 2015 trial, Asaro was acquitted on all counts. Witnesses had either died or refused to testify, and the evidence was thin. It was another dead end. To this day, none of the stolen Lufthansa money or jewels have been recovered. The cash, being unmarked, likely disappeared into mob circulation immediately, used to finance drug deals, loan sharking, and lavish mobster lifestyles until Burke started cutting those lives short. The Lufthansa heist has been immortalized in pop culture thanks to Goodfellas and countless true crime stories. But beyond the glitz of cinema is a stark reality. It remains an unsolved robbery in the eyes of the law. Officially, no one was held accountable for actually robbing the vault, except the insider who opened the door. For law enforcement, it was frustrating. They largely knew who did it, but the lack of physical evidence and the mob's code of silence stymied justice. As one FBI agent put it, the perfect robbery up until the moment it was over. Then it became an uncontrolled mass of greed and fear. The aftermath, with so many murders, ensured that if any of the robbers had thoughts of cutting a deal, they either disappeared or lost their nerve. The Lufthansa heist remains a testament to a particular era of organized crime, a time when the mafia's reach was long even into airport vaults, and when a code of omerta, which is silence, combined with intimidation, kept cases cold. It stands alongside the Gardner Heist, D.B. Cooper, and the Antwerp job as one more criminal caper that has never been fully cracked. And so let's move to the conclusion here. 4 enduring mysteries. In each case, bold criminals dared to execute plans that most would scarcely imagine. Walking out of a museum with Rembrandts and Vermeers, jumping from a 727 into a storm, outwitting high-tech vault security, and looting an airport cache under the mafia's shadow. Each story remains open-ended. The empty frames in Boston still wait for their paintings, and every so often a new tip or theory rekindles hope that the art will surface. The legend of D.B. Cooper continues to inspire sleuths. A man in a suit vanished into the night, leaving only conjecture and a few soggy $20 bills on a riverbank. Antwerp's heist of the century proved even the most secure vault can be defeated by human cleverness, and yet the diamonds and some of the thieves vanished into thin air. The Lufthansa heist showed how greed can unravel even the best-laid criminal plans. A cascade of betrayal, ironically, helped keep law enforcement from ever conclusively solving the case. What draws us to these stories is not just the audacity of the crime, but the mystery that lingers. We are compelled by the unanswered questions. Who truly masterminded them? Where are the missing pieces and money? How did they get away with it? These unsolved cases sit at the intersection of fact and folklore, often yielding more questions the deeper you dig. They remind us that real life doesn't always wrap up neatly. Sometimes the thief slips away, leaving only tantalizing clues and our imagination to fill the gaps. Perhaps one day a deathbed confession will crack one of these cases, or a lucky discovery will bring closure. Until then, they remain in the realm of enduring mystery, captured in case files and the public's mind, unsolved, but not forgotten. Hey, thanks for joining me on this journey through 4 of history's great unsolved crimes. Stay vigilant. Stay curious. And, hey, come back and visit us again. Give us a like and come back soon. Until then, bye.